We're now in Daf Lamed Tes Amud Beis. Now, we're talking about this man who wore a beged that was made of kulot cheles, ugedila migdal. Now, here's where this man veered off the right path. We said that the tzitzis have to have two elements to it. One is the krichos, and that's called in the Torah language gedil. And then, in addition to the gedil, which is the braided part, you need psil. The Torah requires psil, as we'll see in the psukim. And psil means a thread that's not braided. It's just a loose thread going down. But what did he do, this guy? Gedila migdal. He braided his tcheles tzitzis all the way down to the bottom. There was no psil. It was pure gedil. Omar Rav, yoy glime v'lo yoy tchelte. He did a beautiful job with this garment and attaching tzitzis of tcheles to his garment of tcheles, but he didn't do well with regard to the mitzvah of tzitzis because tzitzis require both gedil and psil, and he left no psil. He just simply took all the available chut and wrapped it around and made a krich out of it, of a gedil. Rab Bar Chana, on the other hand, disagrees. Yoy glime v'yod tchilta. He fulfilled his mitzvah of tcheles. So, of tzitzis. Tcheles means tzitzis. In other words, the question is whether a psil is absolutely critical, or it could be pure gedil. That's what Gemara is going to analyze now. What's the source of the machlokas? Rabba Baruch B'chanom Sovar Ksiv Gedil Uksiv Psil. Right, we have two psukim. In one pasuk, which is in Dvarim Chaf Beis, it says Gedilim Tasalecha. So that's Gedilim, which we said are the krichos. But in a pasuk in Bamidbar, it says V'nosal al tzitz takon of Psil Tcheles, especially Psil. So therefore, says Rabbah, the Torah is giving you two options. You can go either way. E gedil, e psil. If you want to make it pure gedil, make it pure gedil, all wrapped up. If you want to make it psil, that's also an option. But Rav Sover, no. We need both. The Torah calls it psil and gedil to teach you it need both some element of psil and some element of gedil. Psil be'ina. Vahi gedilu b'linyana hudiyos. Now, how does the word gedilim tell you how many threads you have to have for tzitzis? And this has to do with a certain kind of biblical exegesis. Gedil shnayim, the word gedil, which implies, right, it's breaded, it's threaded, it's braided. That's a minimum of two, right? You can't make a braid without two. And gedilim, and now the Torah again says gedilim in the plural, which multiplies gedil by two, and therefore you get arba. So you need 4 strings. Again, you folded it over and you get 8 strings. In any event, the Torah mentions both gedil and psil, and when the Torah is telling us is asay gedil upaslihu mitocho, because you have to have also braided fringes and loose threads. Omer Shmuel Mishmei de Levi, Chut Semer Potra Mishel Pishtan. This is a big sugi. Now, the question is whether or not you can have tzitzis made of one of one material, let's call it, and the beged is made of a different material. So, for example, Shmuel, in the name of Levi, wants to know what happens if you take woolen threads, that's called chutei tzemer, and your garment is made of pishtan, otherwise known as linen. And the answer is, it's kosher. Shmuel says in the name of Levi, potrin. Potrin means that it satisfies the requirement and you're yotze. Now, if if you have this statement, you might ask, what about the reverse situation? I mean, you're talking about chutei tzemer on a beged shel pishtan. Iboilahu, what about shel pishtan? Mal sheyiftu shel tzemer. Can I make the fringes of the tzitzios out of linen, attach them to a woolen garment, and the Gemara now analyzes the suffix. Tzemer b'shel pishtan hu depoter. When did Shmuel say that you can have two different minim? And the tzitzios are made of tzemer, and the beged is made of pishtan. That's only in that particular scenario. And why? Kavan the tchelis patra lava nami potar. Okay, let's try to analyze this. Kavan the tchelis patra. Right, tchelis is made of tzemer. So we don't care then. We don't care about the material. We only care about the color. Just one second. Again, I got to get it down. Sorry. Keva de tcheles patra. It only works in one direction. Why? Why should it work only in the direction of chutei tzemer potrim b'shel pishton? Because since what? Since tcheles. Chutei tzemer. So pishton. Chutei tzemer.
It's doesn't the dechilas have to be on wool?
Say it again one more time, Steve.
The dechilas has to be on a wool.
Okay. So again, I shut off the. I need to get this straight. I mean, you're a few steps ahead of me, so let me catch up to you. I thought I understood this morning, but now one second. Um, just one second. Okay, let me get my head on straight here. I get a little tense when I realize that I didn't do a thorough job here. One second. So again, he put on chutei tzemer on a beged of pishtan. So what's the advantage? What's the what's the upgraded status here? Because Kevin de Tcheles, right? Tcheles, like you point everywhere. Tcheles is made of tzemer, patra. So again, I'm just trying to think this out. I think what he's trying to say, the chiddush here, is that we don't care so much about the coloring of it. Let's say he dyed white wool blue, and he made it tcheles. Had he not dyed the thread blue, it would be white, correct? But it's made of tzemer. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out why it goes only in one direction. Here. Let's just a second. Semer b'shel pishton hu de potar. Why is it that semer pater shel pishton, even though they're two different minim? But the answer is because they're both basically white wool. And therefore what? I can use, I'm sorry, I'm very apologetic. I don't hop. You want to explain it to me, Steve? Maybe I'll get it. I'm trying to figure out why the Gemara thinks it only goes in one direction. Kavon, again, the words are very difficult for me. I'm missing something in the lexicon here. I guess I read it very superficially the first time around. Now I'm trying to read it more carefully. Kavon de tcheles potra. I think I put a comma after the word potra is lavan nami poter. So again, you're talking about wool pottering up linen. So what's the logic that that should work? Because tcheles, chutei tzemer, so chutei tzemer, there's something significant about the fact that chutei tzemer is white, I think, because he says lama lava nami poter, kevan de tcheles potra. Let me just see, maybe the footnote will help me here. Perhaps he says tzitzis of the corner, konaf, I guess he means, teaches that the threads must be generally the same material as the garment. So how could semer pata pishton? I don't get it. Thus, the white threads in a woolen garment may not be linen. Nevertheless, Shmuel permits the white threads of a linen garment to be wool, but since the Torah requires that the tchelis threads be wool, indicating that wool is a preferred material for tzitzis threads, the white threads that accompany it may also be wool. What does that mean? It's gibberish to me. The white threads that accompany. Nochmal. Since the Torah requires that tchelis threads be wool, is the white threads that accompany it. I don't know what does it mean accompany it, meaning I think it means the pishtan, it may also be wool, even though they're not the same materials as garment. I think he's saying that there's some superior status to wool as far as the chutei tzitzis are concerned. And where do we see the superior status of wool? Because the threads have to be the same as the material garment. I guess the garment that the Torah is talking about is a woolen garment. And since the tzitzis have to be wool, so it makes sense that wool will have the power to function as tzitzis and pater up the beged, even if the beged is made of pishtan. But if, on the other hand, what? The beged is made of what? Of wool, and now he wants to put threads made of pishtan. The Torah doesn't say that you could put threads of pishtan to pater of the beged. Nine. Perhaps the tzitzis teach that the threads must be generally. You know, it's not clear the way he writes it here. Even in a linen garment, the white threads may also be made of wool, even in a linen garment. So again, it doesn't have to be the same material, but that's only in one direction. That tzemer could pater pishtan. See, I'm not sure if the threads, the chutei tzitzis, have to be made of tzemer, but apparently, right, right, the Gemara thinks now that they have to be made of tzemer. Or maybe now the Gemara is going to change its mind. All right, we'll try to do the best we can. I mean, how are we doing on the clock? Oh, okay, we're not doing too great. Let's see if we can manage this. So the Gemara has a statement of Shmuel in the name of Levi in one direction, and the Gemara now vacillates whether it could go the other direction. If the chutim are made of tzemer, which is what the Torah seemingly requires, then it doesn't matter what the material of the beged is. So even though the beged is made of pishtan, but there's a certain inherent power in chutei tzemer, because that's the way the Torah saw the tzitzis. The tzitzah, the chutei tzitzah tzemer. So now the Gemara wants to say that if tcheles, which equals tzemer in this context, patters up lovan, and I guess lovan in this context means pishtan, that's one thing. But pishtan b'tzemer lo, maybe Shmuel would say that the chutim that are made of pishtan are not valid. The only thing that bothers me is why does Gemara raise the question pishtan b'tzemer? The Gemara should have raised the question pishtan b'pishtan. It would still be the same question. So apparently, we're not excluding the possibility of making the tzitzis out of pishtan. Pishtan means linen, but to have that extra power of being able to serve a different material, that requires like 100%. In other words, if you were to put pishtan on pishtan, that's like 50%. That's fine. Pishtan could function and pater up a beged of pishtan. It's not like we're excluding and disqualifying tzitzis made of pishtan. But if you want to switch materials and you want the material X to pater material Y, meaning you want to have chutei pishtan to pater up a beged shel tzemer, that far we don't go. Because for that you need a full energy, like in the case of Shmuel's chutei tzemer patering up a beged of pishtan. O Dilma, or should we say the following? It works in both directions. Came in the chsiv, lo silva shatnes tzemer upishtan yachtav gdium tasa lecha. Right, so we have both shatnes and tzitzis. Smuchim zelazeh in one pasuk is loshna tzemer b'pish, loshna pishtan b'tzemer. Right, when the Torah is describing a situation of kilayim could go either way, either you added pishtan to tzemer or the reverse. And the juxtaposition to tzitzis is going to tell me that so too you could do it in both directions. You could have, as Shmuel said, tzemer on pishtan, and you can have pishtan on tzemer. Toshma. Now we want to come to some conclusion after vacillating. The Omar Rechava Omar of Yehuda, Chutei tzemer potrim shel pishton potrim b'shel tzemer. Chutei tzemer pishton potrim b'chol mokom afilu b'shiraim. Okay, we'll get back to shiraim in just a second. But in any event, the chiddush here of Rav Yehuda is that it goes both directions. That the Torah, since in Kilayim, any combination of tzemer and pishton works, so to in tzitzis, any combination of tzemer and pishton works. So you can even have chutei pishton on a beged of tzemer. Then he adds two words by telling me that not only can you use chutei pishton to pater up tzemer, or chutei tzemer to pater up pishton, but now we're upgrading the status of chutei tzemer and the chutei pishton. They can pater up any other material, including shirayim, right? So you have a silk garment. You'll see the Gemara is going to get into three different categories of silk garments, and you can pater them up by attaching either chutei tzemer or chutei pishton. So now we've upgraded chutei pishton to 100%. Before we thought maybe it was only 50%. Upliga de Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman ha shirayim p'turim min hatzitzis. So this statement of Rabbi Yehuda that we quoted before is based on the premise that shirayim requires tzitzis no less than a beged of tzemer or a beged of pishtan. And basically shirayim represents all the other materials. Like for example, today we have cotton. So this is against Rav Nachman, who says, what are you talking about pattering it up? I mean, the Torah never required tzitzis on a beged of shirayim, and it was only a rabbinic requirement. And therefore, use whatever tzitzis you want. So Esvei Rav of Nachman, Rav wants to prove that no, even a beged made of silk is obligated in tzitzis d'oraisa, hashirayim, v'haklach, v'hasrikin. These are three different types of silks. One is floss, one is corded, one is regular silk. Anyway, kulam chayov b'tzitzis. So Rav Nachman says, okay, fine. The Bryce says they're all chayav b'tzitzis mirabana. So Rav asks him, Amos Seifa. In that very same Bryce, it says in the Sefer, Kulam Tzemer Pishtan Potrim Bahem, right? That Tzemer Pishtan would be effective as the fringes, the chutim of the tzitzis added to the garment of shirayim. Iyam Pishlev Doraisa Hainu de Mishtaru Bahu Kilayim. Ela Iyam Rabbanan Heichi Mishtaru Kilayim. Now, what's kilayim over here? So I think what Rava is reading into this brisa is kulam tzemer upishtim potrin oso, which I think what he's saying is that in the chutei tzitzis you could have a representation of both wool and linen. So you could have two strings of wool and two strings of linen. Well, that would be kilayim. All right, the Torah was matir kilayim b'tzitzis, but that's only if you assume that shirayim, the beged made of silk, is obligated in tzitzis doraisa. So therefore, Rav Nachman responds, Ema o tzemer o pishtan. Not that you're mixing together chutei tzemer and chutei pishtan, but either you use chutei tzemer or you use chutei pishtan. And that would again pater you up from tzitzis d'Rabbanan in the case of a beged shel shirayim, because Rav Nachman holds that shirayim is only d'Rabbanan, and hochinam mistabra. Rav Nachman wants to prove his point. The Ketani Sefer, the very same Bryce, it says in the Sefer, hein b'minon potrim, shelo b'minon ein potrim. Okay, what about silk? So if you have a garment made of silk, then you could attach tzitzis made of silk. However, if you have tzitzis made of silk and you want to attach them to a garment made of another material, let's say wool or linen, then you don't pater it up. If you're going to tell me that the begadim made of silk are only the Rabbanon Haidu Miftur Kabinam. Now I understand why the Rabbanon said that you can use threads of silk as tzitzis onto a beg, attaching them onto a beged of silk. If you are right, Rova, that what? That even shirayim, a beged of shirayim is that's made of silk, is obligated with the raisa, tsemru fishnu depota. How could you make tzitzis out of silk? The Torah recognizes tzitzis out of tzemer or pishta. And the Gemara rejects it. Mishum haloyu, that's no proof kid Rava, because Rava had a steer. Ksiv hakanaf min kanaf. Uksiv tzemer upishtim. So on the one hand, the Torah says kanaf, which means min kanaf, and that means that you have to put on tzitzis that are made out of the same material as the beged. But on the other hand, it says tzemer upishtan, which seems to imply that there's an upgraded status to both tzemer, meaning tzitzis made of tzemer, or to tzitzis made of pishton, and they pater everything. So you don't have any basis for kanaf min kanaf, because now we're saying that you could put tzitzis made of tzemer on a beged of pishton, or vice versa. So it's not kanaf min kanaf. And the answer is, says Rava, this is very important, that tzemer pishton pochim bein bein shelo b'minam, this upgraded status of tzemer and pishton means that you can make tzitzis out of tzemer. You can make tzitzis out of pishton that'll always patter up the beged, no matter whether it's the same min or a different min. So you can patter up a beged shell pishton with tzitzis of tzemer and vice versa. But shar minim. But if you put tzitzis made of a different min, let's say, for example, shirayim is b'minam potrim, shelo b'minam potrim. You could patter up a beged of silk with tzitzis of silk, but you can't patter up a beged of tzemer or pishton with tzitzis of silk. Rav Nachman holds like in the Tana Debei Rabbi Shmuel. We're going to see that there are two versions of this Tana Debei Rabbi Shmuel, but Rav Nachman had the following version: Tana Debei Rabbi Shmuel, Hoil v'nemru begadim b'Torah stam. Over and over again, the Torah used the word beged in many different contexts, and only in one context, with regard to what's called nigei begadim, which means tzaras on a beged. Parat l'cha kosu b'yachem tzeru pishton. There, the Torah. He tells you where the pasuk is here in Vayikra Yud Gimel, and the Torah specifies what? That it's got to be a beged of wool or linen, otherwise it's not susceptible to tumas saras. Is that's going to be a binyanav? That's going to teach me in all umatum, wherever it says tzemeru fishtan, called tzemeru fishtan. Whenever it says a beged is tzemeru pishtan. So therefore, if tzitzis of I have to be attached to the kanaf, to the garment, then we're talking about, just one second. Right. So now we're going according to Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman wanted to prove that a beged shirayim is potem in a Torah, and the answer is because shirayim is not called a beged. What is a beged? A beged is one of two things: either it's made of tzemer or it's made of pishtan. If it's made of any other material, it's not a beged. Right? You can make a beged out of hides, out of leather, out of silk, out of cotton. I don't know, whatever you want, but it's all going to be d'Rabbanan. It's not d'Oraisa, because the Torah in the parsha of Nigei Begadim defines a beged as tzemer or fishtim, and therefore, when the Torah says put sits on your beged, it's referring to a beged of either wool or linen. But Omer Abaye says we have a different version of Tana Debei Rabbi Shmuel. Hi, Tana Debei Shmuel. Mafka me'idach is in a disagreement with a different Tana Debei Rabbi Shmuel. The Tana Debei Rabbi Shmuel, the price of Tana Debei Shmuel that we have says beged, ein li'ela beged tzemer, minayin. And I think the word tzemer here means tzemer or pishton, but minayin l'rabos tzemer gmalim, right? You're talking about tzemer made of sheep's wool. What about a garment made of camel's wool, or tzemer arnovim? You make a woolen garment out of the wool of rabbits. That must be very nice. Or notza shell izim, goat's feathers. That doesn't sound very comfortable. Ve'haklach vasrikim v'shikim. Those are the three types of silk garments, whether it's regular silk, floss silk, or corded silk. Is it mekabel tumas tzaras? Minayin, how do I know it? Talmud Lomar O Beged, the extra word O, is coming to include all types of garments. And therefore, all types of garments are considered Beged, and all types of garments, no matter what the material is, are Chayev in Tzitzis. And that's the daf for today. Okay. Part of it was a little bit choppy. Sorry. Have a great day.